I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found, maybe you learned something from that. Maybe found some inspiration of things to do and to not do. That's kind of what my intent is in doing this. I love running through these, revisiting them, talking about them, reliving the experiences in my mind. So part of this is like for me. I'm doing this video for me and for you guys. So, but I hope you do get something out of this. I really enjoy doing these, and I enjoy making photos. All right, welcome back to the final part of my favorite photos of 2024. And as I look at it, I've got 7 left, and they're all moose. And then I have a bonus one at the end, which is not a moose. But weird, I never noticed that until right now, that the last 7 are all moose. And it kind of makes sense because this fall was extraordinarily good for moose photography here in the Tetons. I'm not sure exactly why. We had a very warm, very dry fall, and a lot of forest fire smoke in the air that was adding some atmosphere. The fall colors held on very long because it was just dry and calm winds. So in a lot of ways it was a beautiful fall, but in some ways, like the elk weren't particularly good this year. But the moose were spectacular. So here we are, the next 7 images are all moose. Starting with this one, this is a bull moose that I started calling him SOS question mark. SOS. And SOS stands for Son of Shoshone. Because we had a big bull here in the Tetons for many years that Mike Jackson had named Shoshone. And he was like, he had these giant brow tines that stuck out front, and he was very spectacular looking. And he was like the stud of that whole Grovant airport area of the Tetons. And he was the king. And he died a few years ago. But obviously, because he was such a stud, he fathered a lot of moose in that area. And seeing some of the moose that are running around now, I think more than one of them are his sons. But this one in particular, he's got the big brow tines, and they're getting bigger every year too. So next year he might even be more spectacular, but he's got these amazing brow tines. So I'm calling him SOS question mark because we'll never really know if it's his son, but I think it's him. So I refer to him as SOS. Other people might have a different name for him. That's all fine. But this was a morning, forest fire smoke, fall colors in the background. He's chasing this cow around, and this is him doing the Flemin as he is about to mate with her. And I just thought it was a really cool scene with the smoke, simplifies the background, the fall colors, the forest fire smoke, the big, beautiful bull moose flirting with the cow. Anyway, I love this photo. It was wonderful to be there and watch this because we photographed. Again, I was with clients on a workshop with this one. And we just had such a spectacular morning. We made a lot of really great photos. And yeah, just wonderful. So this one was taken at the 560 millimeters again, f4, 1/1600th of a second, ISO 500. And this is another scene where I would have been probably +1, maybe 1.7 on exposure compensation here to get that smoke bright. It'd be similar to shooting in fog, where your camera's going to tend to underexpose those scenes. So shoot this nice and bright, because this would have a tendency to get very dark and kind of muddy and murky looking. I preferred this one brighter. It gives more of the feeling of fall and the bright colors that are happening in the background there. So that's SOS question mark. And oh, look, who's this again? It's SOS question mark. And this was a different morning with a different client. And we had some snow this morning, and we had a great session with him, again, chasing a cow. It might have been the same cow, could have been a different one, I don't remember. But again, he was doing a Flehmen. She was standing nearby, the light snow falling, and he was flirting with her, and he was doing that Flehmen response where he is sniffing the, sensing, I don't know if it's technically sniffing, sensing the pheromones to see if she's ready to mate. And just right place, right time. We'd been following this pair around as they were doing their courtship stuff, set up, and then he did this kind of Flehmen response looking straight at us, which was beautiful. Anyway, really cool scene. Light snow falling, wonderful subject. And this one I converted to black and white here. We've got 1/640th of a second, f2.8, ISO 500. So plenty of shutter speed there to freeze the motion of the snowflakes. If this had lasted longer, I would have slowed this shutter speed down to try and get some blur in that snowfall as well. I might have taken this down to about 1/100th of a second and get some motion in the snowfall, but this only lasted a couple of seconds and I wanted to make sure I nailed it, so I just didn't have time to shoot it both ways. I love to shoot snowfall, rainfall. Anytime I have those opportunities to shoot it with some blur and nice and sharp, I'll do it both ways. Sometimes you really like one more than the other. But this one looks great. It might have looked good with some blurry snow as well. On to the next one. Oh, look at that. It's another moose. And this guy, there's no doubt about his name. This is Hoback. So he's like our most famous moose now, kind of since Shoshone went away. Hoback has been the king of that area and the most famous bull. He's the big stud, and most years he's got this drop tine. Some years he has 2 drop tines. This year he only had this one, and he's got the floppy ear. He's got a broken ear now. That happened last year. And he's old. So he's like the king, but he's on his way. He's on the decline for sure. So like this SOS guy, there's a couple other bulls now in this area that are pushing him around. So we'll find him on the perimeter working some of the more satellite cows now. He's leaving that territory a little bit more now because he's not the king that he used to be. He's still beautiful. He's got the floppy ear, the drop tine, the giant antlers, but he's past his prime here. And I was with a client out here as well. We had him bedded down in this gorgeous snowstorm, and he was just laying there for a couple hours. And we were just like, man, we can't leave this. When he stands up, he's going to have snow on his back, and it's going to be, perfect background. It's going to be beautiful. We just sat there, cold, waiting. And there were some other bulls nearby, and we were like, if any of them stand up, it's going to be amazing. Well, eventually Hoback stood up. None of the other ones did, and it got dark, and it was over. But Hoback, luckily, he stood up. We were able to get some frames of him. He turned his head around and scratched his ass with that drop tine, and then laid back down. So he gave us, I don't know, I'd have to look back, but maybe 60 seconds to photograph him. And he gave us a couple of different poses, and it was beautiful. He's covered in snow and the snow's falling. Nice, beautiful, soft light and everything. But this one, it was just like classic. This is like Hoback past his prime. He's got the floppy ear and the tongue out, and he's like, oh God, that feels so good, scratching my ass with my drop tine. Like that's the most famous drop tine in the world. And he's using it to scratch his ass. So I love this frame, just floppy ear, floppy tongue, drop tine scratch in the butt. How can you go on? Banger. This is a banger, right? To me it is. A lot of people be like, what is going on here? Like, there's something wrong with that moose. And there kind of is. He's like the old king. But anyway, I love the photo. That's Hoback. He's great. So anyway, this was f2.8, ISO 500, 1/800th of a second. And I'm psyched to have got that photo of him. That's just classic Hoback. Looking all goofy. Dig him. All right. Here we have 2 bulls. This is late season, so past breeding season, but they're still kind of posturing, deciding who's the toughest out there. So they're still doing some dominance type behaviors out there. No like big fights, but they're kind of setting up for next year, I think. So this one on the right doing the big beautiful head turn, that is SOS question mark. And the one on the left, I don't know if he's got a name, but he's a contender. He's a big giant studly bull. He's like as big as these other dudes. So these two were just having some kind of, they were talking to each other a little bit, like trying to feel each other out. But anyway, this just was a cool little moment as they were kind of posturing and doing the head wobbles, like moose like to do the head wobble when they're coming in and trying to impress the other bulls and stuff. So that's what these guys were doing. I just loved the gestures of these two. Nice clean background, beautiful snowstorm. I squatted way down low so I could get their heads and antlers up into the snow and use that sagebrush that I'm down in as a blurry foreground to just kind of declutter that scene a little bit. So anyway, I love this one. It's just kind of interesting gesture, you know, in a nice clean photo here. So this is f2.8, 1/3200th of a second at ISO 800. Again, shot very bright. I wanted that sky to be almost white. Oh, look at this. That's another moose. And I don't know if this one has a name or not. Our guy who used to name all the moose here, he moved away a few years ago. So there's some like confusion about moose naming out here. But this is one of our big, beautiful bulls. I don't know his name. But he was doing the Fleming. Again, there was a cow moose just to his right. And so he's flirting with her and he's trying to sense if she is ready to mate. And this was late in the evening. The sun was just about to go down. And again, I had this blacktail butte in the background that goes into shade. The sun is back left here, still lighting up the foreground and the scene, but that hill has all gone into shade and it's dark. So I can get this fog when I've got a dark background. If I had done that like on the previous frame with that, you know, a white overcast background, you wouldn't see it at all. So just like that elk earlier, I got a nice dark background and then I, you know, position myself so that the animal is backlit and then when they breathe, poof, this is what happens. And that was a really cool one to get during a moose Fleming. So anyway, this is about the light and the gesture. I love it. This one is, again, 560 millimeters, f4, 1/1600th of a second, ISO 500. And I make this nice and dark on purpose. So the darker I can make that background, the more contrast there is with the rim lighting and that fog, because it's nice and bright. So if I make the whole image dark, we get lots of nice contrast there. So I might have been at like -1 or -2 on exposure compensation here to kind of make the moose and that background nice and dark. Okay, and the last image, except for the bonus image. The last image, again, it's my friend Hoback. Like probably not the greatest photo here, you know. It feels kind of snapshotty to me, but it's not. But it kind of feels like it. I don't know why. But anyway, the King of the Tetons with the Grand right behind him. You don't always get this opportunity. You can get it all the time, but where they're covered in sagebrush, where the background is other moose or whatever, you know, it seems like it should be easy, and it's not like, oh my God, a once in a lifetimer, but it's cool when you get it. And he was up walking. The grass was short enough that I can see all four legs in there. His drop tine is standing out against his dark fur. So the lighter color of that drop tine really stands out. And I would argue that that's probably the first place your eyes go when you see this photo is to that drop tine, because of the contrast of the bright tine and the dark of the moose. The Grand is back there. We know it's the Grand Teton. It doesn't need to be sharp. There are photographers that will argue that the background's too blurry, that should all be sharp. You should have shot this at f22 or f16 or something. Great, you shoot it that way. I really want my subject to pop, and I want my backgrounds to be recognizable at times, but not sharp, so that they're going to compete with the detail in the subject. So there's no detail back there, but it's very obvious that it's the Grand Teton. And that's really all that I needed. So I chose to do kind of a dark black and white conversion on this one. And, you know, this, I dig it. But again, there's something about it that feels a little snapshotty to me. So I'm not going to go out and say this is like the best photo I've ever taken. But I really like it. It's the king of the Tetons with the Tetons. And, you know, who knows? He might not survive the winter or something. He's old. He might get pushed right out of there. He might get killed next year during rut or something. So I'm cognizant of his age, and my opportunities to photograph him looking great are numbered. So I'm happy with this one. So this one was taken with that Tamron 35-150 lens. Wide open at f2.8, and that lens is wonderful, and it's fast and it's sharp, but it vignettes heavily wide open. And this is natural vignette, so I did not add a vignette to this photo. I like that look in a lot of photos. Sometimes I don't, but that's one of the complaints about that lens, is that it's got heavy vignetting wide open. In general, I like the look of that, so I don't tend to worry about it very often. But in this one, I like it as well. So anyway, this one was, it was getting dark out there. So this is f2.8, ISO 1600, 1/200th of a second. So, you know, in hindsight, I probably should have been a little faster on the shutter speed because he's at close range and moving. But he's moving slowly, and I shot a bunch of frames there. As he's coming, I'm shooting a burst, and some of them did have motion blur in them, and they get thrown away. But some of them are tack sharp like this one, and they are keepers. Very good. Did I say that was the last one? I lied. It's not the last one. This is another moose. I made a video about this one too. You can watch this. This one I was not with a client. I was out on my own vlogging, and it was really fun. This is a bull moose I call Elhorn. It's not obvious in this frame, but if you watch that other video, you'll see his antlers are they look more like an elk antler than a moose antler. But anyway, this big, beautiful bull, he's feisty. He's out there fighting with the other guys. And this was late season. This was December. And he was still out there trying to prove that he's a tough guy, because he was like attacking the sagebrush, thrashing around. And he got this piece of sagebrush stuck up in his antler there. And he turned and looked at me with the snowy face and like smiled at me. And, you know, covered in snow. So a super cool photo op there. Just so much gesture going on here between the snow-covered nose and the smile and the sagebrush stuck in the antlers and the snow on his body. It's got a lot going on, and I super dig this frame. It's really cool. So anyway, this one is 1/640th of a second, f4, ISO 500, and that is the bull we call Elhorn. Now, the bonus image. And I'm calling this a bonus image because all the other ones are nature photography, and that's kind of what I do on YouTube, and that's kind of what I'm known for, is nature photography. But I love doing all kinds of photography. And this bonus frame comes from a little outing. I took my son to an air show down at Hill Air Force Base. Hill Air Force Base? I think that's what it's called. Down in Utah, and we got to watch the Thunderbirds. We got to see a lot of really cool stuff. And this was a really cool frame that I made of the Thunderbirds doing their inverted pass. And they come by, I don't know what they're doing, 500 miles an hour right there, just a few feet apart. And I wanted to, we had some like clouds in the sky. It was like partly cloudy. And most of the time when you've got blue skies at these air shows, there's no sense of speed. Like I could have these two, they just look like they're hovering in midair, right? There's no sense of speed. On an airplane with propellers, You can slow down your shutter speed to get prop blur, and that shows some sense of speed. If there's a mountain behind them, you can get some blur in that background as you're panning, you know, to keep up with those 500-mile-an-hour things. You can get some blur that way to show some motion. But against a blue sky, you don't get opportunities to show motion. And so I decided that's what I was going to attempt to do here, try and show some motion in these jets and as they go by. So I slowed my shutter speed down, and so I did this one at f8, ISO 72, 1/125th of a second. And as they were coming, it was shoot a burst and try and pan perfectly with them at 125th of a second. And then you're going to get that blur. The clouds are going to blur out behind him. And that little streaky, the smoke trail that they're leaving behind is blurring out as well, and during that 125th of a second. I just happened, this frame where they're like perfectly symmetrical, right against each other, happened to just turn out tack sharp. Some of the other ones were tack sharp, but because of the angle they were at, it didn't work quite as well. Some of them, like on either side of these, the two frames on either side, both were too blurry. So, you know, I got lucky. You know, I practiced this a lot, so it's not all luck, right? I practiced this. There's skill involved to doing this. But the one frame that I would have wanted to be sharp out of this sequence was tack sharp, and it turned out beautiful. So I'm going to give you this as my bonus image, non-nature related, but a wonderful image that I was super psyched to get. So anyway, that'll be my end of my favorite 24/26. I showed you 26 images today, but that's my favorite 24 of 24. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found, maybe you learned something from that. Maybe you found some inspiration of things to do and to not do. That's kind of what my intent is in doing this. I love running through these, revisiting them, talking about them, reliving the experiences in my mind. So part of this is like, for me, I'm doing this video for me and for you guys. So, but I hope you do get something out of this. I really enjoy doing these, and I enjoy making photos. So thanks for watching. I guess the final thing I'll plug here is just workshops. Spring workshops, I still have availability. Fall, I do still have some decent availability in September and October, but they are filling fast, and they do tend to fill up way ahead of time. So if you're coming out this fall and interested in joining me during the fall season, get on that early-ish. Spring, I hope they fill up soon, because we're getting right there. We're getting real close to that mid-April to mid-June window. That's kind of our prime spring sessions. So appreciate you guys signing up for those, and appreciate you watching the videos and all your support. Let me know in the comments if you have questions about these kind of things. If there's something I can answer kind of quick without writing a whole, you know, essay, I'll jump on and answer a bunch of questions for you. So appreciate you watching, and have a great day. See you on the next video. Take care.